things kind of settled down in the 1920s, but then in the 1930s with the Great Depression and the surplus of pastors who didn't have calls because congregations were so poor they just went vacant. So the American Lutheran began publishing a whole series of articles calling for changes in the Synod, and then they held seminars and other meetings and politics leading up to the 1935 convention. I interviewed Martin Charlemagne, who was at the 35 convention. What was his name? He was a pastor in Springfield. He had been also a teacher at Springfield Seminary. Seeley? I can't. But anyway, he was also at the 35 convention, and the politicking that was going on there that had never been seen before in the Missouri Synod. It was mainly being done by the American Lutheran Publicity Bureau, the Aus Pfotenhauer. They were pushing for Paul Lindemann, who was the editor of the publication, the American Lutheran. But when they realized he couldn't be elected, they put everything on for John Benken. John Benken continued for a long time. The conservatives started around the time of a statement of 44. Paul Bergdorf started a publication called the Confessional Lutheran, but not much organization beyond that. Then right around 1960, Herman Otten began Lutheran News, which then became Christian News, but still not a big organization of conservatives. In '62, Benken retired, and Oliver Harms was elected, then the conservatives started to gear up more, and by 1969, they had proposed J.A.O. Preuss and got it. But that had just come in by way of American church life. What really strikes me as odd, and please understand, I do not mean to be stumping for this position, okay? I was contacted by a former chaplain, a retired chaplain, and if I would agree to let my name stand for this position, and I said I at no time aspired for this position, but I would, if elected, I would consider that a call from God and serve. Now, that groups support one candidate over another, that they support meetings like this, is that politicking? Well, in a way, I suppose you could say it is. But I'm not going to sit there and bemoan that. That's just a reality of life, and I don't know that as long as we're dealing with issues and not persons, that you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. I don't think that there is anything scripturally wrong in politicking in that sense.
One of the other pastors in our circuit suggests that we go to a convention similar to what the Southern Baptists have, where every congregation has their delegates. And then there is a memorial in the convention workbook about selecting officers for the Synod by lot or some other lottery, some other means. I don't know if you've seen that or not.
I haven't read every memorial, but I did see that one, and that kind of caught my attention.
I mean, that's a personal favorite of mine. I think that would eliminate politics pretty effectively. But anyway, but do you know when they changed the polity from?
I do not know the exact date. I know that the Synod grew, particularly in the 50s, so I suspect it happened sometime in the 50s, probably a little broader, between 1935 and 1960. First full-time district president was in 1960. We almost doubled in size between 1900 and 1955. So, and we were close to 3 million. Now, you've got to understand, what's now Lutheran Church Canada was also included. Those were the Canadian districts, and then Brazil was also a district of the Missouri Synod. So when we established partner churches in the early 1960s, we lost membership because of that, and then we also lost membership because of the AELC split that happened in 1976. But I would say, and I'll have to do research, but I would say it's most likely in the 1950s.
I know there was a time when we had more frequent conventions, like every 2 years. I don't know if there was a yearly convention back in the early days of Senate or not. And then there's another thing that seems to be a rather recent innovation in the Senate in polity, and that is the rise of the power of the Council of Presidents and its influence on the direction of Senate. Do you have any comments on those things?
Okay. First, as far as drawing lots, let me just say something about that, go back to that. Although it's interesting to do away with politics, and I guess, you know, in view of the election of Matthias, it is biblical. I don't know. I guess I'm influenced too much by American culture. I think that having elections would be better. Also, whether or not you have a pastoral lay delegate from every congregation in Synod, well, according to our current statistics, I think we have 6,000 congregations, so that would make 12,000 delegates at the convention. That would be rather expensive.
The Southern Baptist folks, they managed to do that with those
right. Now, as far as the rise of the Council of Presidents, when it was actually during the Pieper presidency that it was first put forth, and I think it was around 2005, somewhere in there, prior to 2011. I'm not 2000, I mean 1905. Tell you what, I lose a century here or there. What's that? Anyway, 1905 to right around there, 1905 to 1911. It was proposed at a convention that they establish a college of presidents. It was never approved, but it just kind of happened. It kind of evolved over time, particularly when the Constitution and bylaws gave the district presidents responsible for placing of candidates from the seminary. So they also became more and more concerned with the issuing of calls and the practice of ordination. They had regular committees that talked about this from the 1920s all the way through the 1950s and into the 1960s. Resulted in changes, for example, that a pastor could be ordained outside of the congregation that called him, and that was around 1959, and then 1962, that a pastor could be ordained to a call other than to a call to the congregation to preach the word and administer the sacraments. So a person could be called to be librarian at a seminary and be ordained. Or
did that develop from the need to call pastors into the chaplaincy? I've heard that there is a connection there, and World War II had some effect.
That was an excuse that was given, although World War II was over, and I know of only 2 chaplains that were called directly from the seminary